things that stick out to me. If anyone has something that stands out to them that I skip over, feel free to stop me and we'll discuss it. All right, let's start in Judges chapter 6. Does anyone want to read this morning?
That's all you want.
Just the first 2 verses right now.
And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hands of Midian for 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains, and caves, and strongholds.
All right, I wanted to stop here. Found it interesting that they mentioned that they made the dens and the caves and the strongholds. This is not the only time that they use these dens and caves to hide in or to find shelter. They use them at later times. We'll see in 1 Samuel chapter 13 and throughout 1 Samuel we'll see they use the dens and the caves many times. So with them building this here, they go on later on. They still use them. Let's read verses 3 through 6. I'll read that one. So it was whenever Israel had sown, Midianites would come up. Also Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. Then they would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, coming in as numerous as locusts. Both they and their camels were without number, and they would enter the land to destroy it. So Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. How have we felt in the past when we knew that God was not favorable to our actions or to things that we have done in our lives? Has anyone ever felt that God was not happy with something they had done? And here we see He's not happy with them, and we see that He sent other nations against them, and we find that throughout the Old Testament many times with the children of Israel. He sends other nations to punish the children of Israel.
Aaron, what I think is interesting in here, this is a good example. I've got some old corn. I really need it to make, and it's the only seed I have. It don't make, it's gone. And so as God is punishing them using the Midianites, He takes away the hope of next year too. It wasn't just this year's produce, but He took all the, eventually in an agronomic society, if they come and destroy all your stuff, you don't even have anything to start on next year. And so in His punishment of them to get them turned back to Him, it's not just immediate, it's going to be a lasting punishment if they don't correct these things.
Yeah, they can't just run to the feed store and get some more seed. When they're ready to plant, I remember my great-grandpa planting corn. He would save the seed from year to year and replant. And that's how they had to do it. They had to make sure they had saved some. They didn't eat it all as well. Because if they ate everything, then they wouldn't have anything to plant for the next year. All right, let's read verses 7 through 10. Does anybody want to read?
Now it came about when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord on account of Midian, that the Lord sent a prophet to the sons of Israel. And he said to them, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, It was I who brought you up out of Egypt, and brought you out of the house of slavery. And I delivered you from the hands of the Egyptians, and from the hands of your oppressors, and dispossessed them before you, and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you have not obeyed me.
All right, and going back to the example of saving seed for the next year, here God is telling them, you did not listen, and I will punish you, but I have taken care of you in the past, and I will continue to take care of you. God does things, does he do things in our time or in his time?
This time.
In his time. And he does them in the way that he sees fit for us, and we may not always agree with it or like it, but we have to know that it's the best thing for us. Let's read verses 11 through 14. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress, in order to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, The Lord is with you, you mighty men of valor. Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours, and ye shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? Here we see that God chose Gideon, and we know that God may come to us at any point in the day, and he may convict us to he may send someone to us or give us an opportunity to share his word and to share him. And he chooses us to do his will. We must be ready. We know in 2 Timothy 2 and 15 tells us to study to show ourselves approved, working under Christ. And with that study, it's something we have to do every day. We have to stay in the Word, constantly be ready and be prepared. I know there are several times opportunities arise for me, and I wasn't able to share because I stumbled on myself or didn't recognize the opportunity.
Aaron, it's interesting. Even Midian's like, you abandon us. They never said, and we're this way, they never said, we abandoned you, and this is the end result of it. We did evil to you. We had other gods. We did things you told us not to do. Never said that. You abandon us is even Gideon. That's the way he starts out. God, you're the ones that abandoned us. And they just had a hard time acknowledging that. I'm preaching out Deuteronomy this morning, by the way. It's going to dovetail in right behind this. So they never acknowledged when he said from the get-go, you don't do what I tell you, you're going to be punished. You're going to be plagued.
Yeah. And
But they project it back at God as you're the abandoner.
yeah, how many times are we in a situation in life where we're at a low point and we want to ask God, why did this happen to us? Instead of what did we do to cause this to happen? All right, let's, the next reading's rather lengthy. I'm going to read verse 15 to 35.
He said unto them, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. And he said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me. Depart not hence, I pray thee, until I come unto thee, and bring forth my present, and set it before thee. And he said, I will tarry until thou come again. And Gideon went in and made ready a kid, and unleavened cakes, and ephah of flour. And the flesh he put in a basket, and put the broth in a pot, and brought it out unto him under the oak, and presented it. And the angel of God said unto him, Take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put forth at the end of the that was in his hand and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and there rose up fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. And when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord, Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. And the Lord said unto him, Peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to the Lord and called it Jehovah Shalom. Unto this day it is yet in Ophrah of the Abiezrites.
Now the same night, 2:35?
Yes.
Oh, now the same night it came about that the Lord said to him, Take your father's bull and a second bull 7 years old, pull down the altar of Baal which belongs to your father, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of the stronghold in an orderly manner. Take a second bull and offer a burnt offering with wood of the Asherah which you should cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had spoken to him. And it came about, because he was too afraid of his father's household and the men of the city to do it by day, that he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was torn down, and the Asherah was beside it and cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar which had been built. And they said one to another, Who did this thing? And when they searched about and inquired, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, did this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, Bring out your son, that he may die, for he has torn down the altar of Baal, and indeed he has cut down the Asherah which is beside it. But Joash said to all of those who stood against him, Will you contend for Baal, or will you deliver him? Whoever will plead for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because someone has torn down his altar. Therefore on that day he named him Jerubbaal, that is to say, let Baal contend against him, because he had torn down his altar. Then all of the Midianites and the Amalekites and the sons of the east assembled themselves, and they crossed over and camped in the valley of Jezreel. So the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called together to follow him. And he sent messengers throughout Manasseh, and they also were called together to follow him. And he sent messengers to Asher and Zebulun and Naphtali, and they came up to meet them.
All right, thank y'all. I want to jump back up all the way to verse 15, where when Gideon tells the Lord that his clan, the clan of Manasseh, is the weakest, and he is the least of that clan in his father's house. How many times have we known God to use the biggest and strongest man to do his will? Not very many. Actually, in most cases, he wants to use the one that is the weakest, the least known, the one that, according to man, has no chance of getting the job done. Here in verse 16 through 24, we see that Gideon worshiped God. That's the first thing Gideon did after God had told him to go out. He worshiped God. And that is something that we should do on a daily basis. First thing we should do is to be with God, pray with God, read His Word, and get our minds right with God, and in God's mindset, so that we can do His will throughout the day. And particularly in verse 21, when he laid the meat and the unleavened bread on the rock, and fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and unleavened bread. This is The only other time, there may be other times, the only other time I found this happening, let's turn to Leviticus chapter 9. Leviticus chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. Moses and Aaron went into the tabernacle of meeting, came out and blessed the people. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. And fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Here we see is interesting and similar to the burning bush when God appeared in a flame of fire, that the object that was used for the fire was not burned up. And we know when we build a fire, in most cases, it's going to burn everything that it touches. And I've always found it interesting when God appears through fire that He consumes what He wants to consume, not everything that is touched.
But also, if you look right here, I mean, look what it took to make Gideon realize that this was an angel of the Lord. I mean, in 22, he actually perceived that this was an angel. Because it makes you kind of think that he didn't think that this was who he said who this was.
Yeah.
Now, in the Passover, God told them that they had to burn everything there. They couldn't finish the meal and burn all the.
Mm-hmm. That was, I'm not exactly sure why He told them that, but I would think that would be you made an offering to God, and whatever's left over, you don't want just anybody to come in and eat, and you don't want it to ruin and make spoils. Many of the practices that God told them, from looking back, it was health standpoint for them. They didn't realize it, but it kept them healthy as a people. And going along with James's comment about Gideon didn't realize this was an angel of the Lord that was before him, he realized that he was in the presence of God, but he didn't exactly realize to what extent. And after this happened, he finally realized, hey, this is the real deal. I need to pay attention.
I don't think we should miss how this conversation starts between the angel of the Lord and Gideon. Gideon asks the angel, what happened to the miracles that my fathers had seen? So it's only appropriate that the angel would answer him with, here's one of those miracles.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll find later on, Gideon, he still wants more miracles, even after this. And it's jumping ahead a little bit, but how many times do we want to show me your God, prove it? And I know me personally, I've never had someone come up to me face to face and say, I'm God. And that's something that they experienced, the children of Israel.
Well, this angel here, some attribute this to be Christ in the Old Testament, but this angel here is a bit different than sometimes Abraham saw angels and he wasn't afraid of them, but this man, Gideon thinks he's going to die because he's seen close to God, if not seeing God, as a result of seeing him face to face when he realizes who he is. So it doesn't just impress him from the stance it's a miracle, but his fear is then I have to die because I've seen holiness.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure with the story of Moses, we know that Moses appeared before God, but God told him, don't look directly on my face. And I'm sure that part of the story was passed down from generation to generation, and they knew, if I look at God in the face, I'm going to die, or for us, we know we're going to be dead when we see God face to face, as far as an earthly body. Any other comments? All right, let's pick up in Judges 6. We'll read verses 36 through 40. So Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. There is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground. Then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." And it was so, when he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece together, he wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, but on all the ground let there be dew." And God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground. As we just mentioned, how many times asking for miracles from God do we want God to show us a miracle so that our faith will be stronger? We see another case of a man pleading with God in Genesis 18 when Abraham was pleading for Sodom and Gomorrah. We all know the story of how God saved 50, God saved 40, saved 30. He kept going down until he finally said, "Well, if there's less than 10, then I will save the city," and he still couldn't find 10 faithful. Well, we know that God is patient with us when we need that strength and that faith. He will give us what we need in order to have that faith. And for us now, it's through His Word, through reading His Word, and that's one reason we must stay in it daily, is not only to be ready for them opportunities to share His Word, but that we have the faith that we can live the life that we need to. So when someone comes to us, we're someone they can trust in to share the truth with them.
So, what I'm wondering about is, you know how in Jesus' time we hear so much about demons and things, I guess they can do to impress people. So, were they around as well during that time? And maybe they couldn't tell the difference?
I don't know off the top of my head of any cases reported. To tell you the truth, I don't know. Remember.
It's not recorded. There's no
Yeah.
recording evidence of demons until Jesus' time. Prior to that, now there was the witch of Endor, for example. There were people that practiced dark stuff or attempted to practice. And by the way, she was surprised when Samuel showed up too. But anyway, but there is no evidence of the working of demons except in Jesus' time. That there anywhere in the Bible that there's an indication that there were false miracles. Magicians, yes. Think back to Egypt. They had magic art. They were doing magic to produce like things similar to it, but not in the form of demons as we see in
So
Jesus.
it wasn't a form of testing, and they just wanted miracles.
I think it's more on the personality, establishing the personality of Gideon. I think that's why he keeps asking, because I think that's something in him that he's got to deal with. So that's why he keeps asking, am I sure? Am I sure? Because when you establish where he's from, he's the youngest of his family, the weakest of the tribe. So he's got this personality, and all these questions are describing Gideon's personality. He just wants to be sure. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Is that who you are? Are you sure? Am I sure? And God's real patient.
Yeah,
Well-
and too, you see him questioning and then doing what God asked.
Yeah.
He went tore down.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Altar to Baal, he took friends and he tore that down, that was a big deal.
Don't go away, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get something. Don't leave. And so he runs off and brings it back, and the Lord said, I'll wait for it. But he knows, his
most cases, we've been the same way as the children of Israel. Prove it to me, or show me. Yeah. Am I dreaming, or, and we find when the angel first appeared to him, Gideon was in a cave working. I know when I'm in the middle of work and I get hot and tired, and somebody just appeared to me out of the blues and started talking to me, I think I was crazy. But as far as the demons, like Wayne said, I don't know. I don't even know in history, apart from the Bible, if anybody.
Well, let me further on it. So here's the rationale behind that. They were released and allowed to roam in that sense when Jesus was here because it was a spiritual fight. This is physical Israel. It's going to get to spiritual. But the devil, he went around trying to get individual people, Job, for example, but he hasn't figured out himself the plan. And so we're talking about physical Israel. There's not the spiritual fight. It's foreshadowing it, but it's not the spiritual fight. Not to say they weren't supposed to do what God did. When Jesus showed up, the devil's going to put a full court press on to try to destroy the Son of God.
Yeah, they can. That is definitely something we should think about, and I think that's why everything in the Bible was written. It's something that we need to take to heart and think about. It's not just written just to be written. It's something that we need and that we should understand, because God did it once. He very well can do it again. I think that I was thinking that we should use Gideon as an example of, it's every person in the Bible is someone that we should learn from their mistakes and their successes. It's there for us to learn and to grow from. Someone else have a?
I just think it strikes me as there were people here that seemed to be a lot more worried about visiting Baal than looking at God. Apparently it wasn't even in their ask God to save them.
Oh yeah,
But God was still doing all these things to save them. When it did anything.
and that's one thing they constantly struggled with, was worship of other idols. They picked up all these idols and different gods from all the nations that while they were traveling through the wilderness from Egypt to Canaan, they picked up on all the forms of worship and other gods that all the other people had.
And who they didn't destroy, even more who they didn't destroy. Because they didn't do what he said.
Yeah.
They got in there and started intermingling with them. And that was,
Exactly. He told them to completely destroy them as they did destroy them, and they didn't. They said, well, we'll keep the spoils because that's a good thing, and we'll keep these people because they're good, and that's not what God told them. He told them to destroy everything.
Obviously,